I sacrificed my career to care for my sick mom. Then she left everything to my golden child brother. I stared at the will in my hands, my fingers gripping the crisp paper so tightly that the edges curled beneath my touch. The lawyer's voice droned on in the background, words blurring together, meaningless and hollow. My pulse pounded in my ears, a deafening roar of disbelief, betrayal, and a slow-burning fury that threatened to consume me whole. And to my beloved son, Daniel, I leave the house, the savings, and all remaining assets in my estate. It is my wish that he carries forward the family legacy and uses these resources to build a stable future. Daniel. Of course, the golden child, the prodigal son, the one who never once sat through the endless nights of pain, who never wiped the sweat from her fevered brow, who never spent years putting his own life on hold to be at her side. No, that had been me. I was the one who had stayed, the one who gave up my career, my ambitions, my independence, to become my mother's caretaker. I was the one who put aside my dreams, forfeiting opportunities that others would have killed for, because she needed me. And now, she was gone, and she had left me nothing. Daniel, who had breezed through life without a care, who had always been the favorite despite his selfishness, his irresponsibility, his absence, was now the one walking away with everything. I forced myself to look up, my gaze locking onto the man sitting across the polished mahogany table. Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smirk barely concealed on his lips. His tailored suit, his smug confidence, the self-assured gleam in his eyes, it all made my stomach churn. "Wow," he said, flipping through the documents like he was browsing a menu. Didn't expect her to be so generous. My fingers dug into the paper, crumpling the edges. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to understand. Had I meant nothing to her? Had she truly believed that Daniel, who had only shown up when it was convenient, who had never sacrificed a single thing for her, deserved everything? The lawyer cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as if sensing the tension thickening in the room. "I understand this may come as a shock," he said cautiously, looking at me with something resembling pity. "But the will is legally binding. Unless there is evidence of coercion or undue influence." Daniel let out a short laugh. "Oh, come on. Mom wasn't the type to be coerced. She made her choice, fair and square." My head snapped toward him, rage simmering just beneath my skin. "Fair?" I bit out, my voice shaking with barely restrained fury. "You call this fair?" He shrugged, a smug grin tugging at his lips. "She obviously thought I was the better investment." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me, one that felt almost foreign. "An investment?" My hands trembled as I slammed the will onto the table. "I gave up everything for her, Daniel. My job, my life, my future. Where the hell were you when she needed help? When she was sick? When she could barely stand on her own?" He rolled his eyes. "Oh, please, you act like you were some kind of saint. No one forced you to stay. That was your choice." My stomach twisted, the sheer audacity of his words slicing through me like a blade. "You mean the choice you never even considered making?" I shot back. "Because why would you? You knew I'd do it. You counted on it, just like she did." Daniel smirked, leaning forward, resting his elbows on the table. "And yet, here we are. I get everything. You get nothing. Sounds like you were just bad at playing the game." The air in the room turned suffocating. This was a game to him. This wasn't about fairness, about love, about gratitude. This was power. I saw it, saw the truth that had been in front of me all along. It had never mattered what I did. It had never mattered how much I sacrificed, how deeply I loved, how hard I tried to prove my worth. Mom had made her choice, just like Daniel had made his. And now, it was my turn to make mine. I took a slow breath, forcing the anger to settle, forcing the years of bitterness and betrayal into something colder, sharper. If Daniel thought I was just going to roll over and accept this, he had another thing coming. "Fine," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You want to play this like a game? Let's play." Daniel raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "What, you gonna challenge the will?" "Good luck with that." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh, I don't need luck, just patience. And trust me, Danny boy, I've had plenty of that." I stood, gathering my things with slow precision, making sure he saw just how unbothered I was. Because if there was one thing Daniel couldn't stand, it was the idea that he wasn't in control. "You might want to enjoy your little victory while it lasts," I murmured, sliding my chair back into place. "Because I'm about to make your life a living hell." And with that, I walked out. I didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I went to the one person I knew would help me tear Daniel's world apart. My lawyer. Evelyn Carter had been my mentor once, back before I had abandoned my career to care for Mom. A sharp, ruthless attorney with a reputation for demolishing her opponents, she had always told me I had a mind built for strategy. And now I needed every ounce of that strategic thinking. She looked up from her desk when I entered her office, eyes narrowing as she took in my expression. Well, I was wondering when you'd finally call me again." I dropped the will onto her desk. "I need your help." She skimmed through it, her lips pressing together in a thin line. "Let me guess," she said dryly. "Your mother played favorites, and now your charming brother is walking away with everything." I exhaled sharply. Bingo. She sat back, steepling her fingers. "Tell me, do you want to win this case, or do you want revenge?" I met her gaze, my own resolve hardening. "Both." Her slow smirk was all the answer I needed. "Then let's get to work." Daniel thought he had won. He thought he had beaten me, outmaneuvered me, played me. But what he didn't realize was that I had spent years being underestimated. Years watching, waiting, learning. He had spent his life getting everything handed to him. I had spent mine fighting for every scrap of recognition, for every ounce of survival. And now? Now it was my turn to take everything. He wanted to play dirty? I would show him what dirty really looked like. Because I wasn't going to just challenge the will. I was going to destroy him. And when I was done, he would wish he had never been born the golden child. I walked out of Evelyn's office with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. For too long, I had been the afterthought, the one expected to sacrifice without question, the one discarded the moment I was no longer needed. But that version of me, the one who tolerated, who endured, who accepted, that person was dead. And in their place stood someone dangerous. Daniel thought he had won. He believed that this was over, that the will was the final nail in the coffin, that I'd slink away quietly, tail tucked between my legs, licking my wounds in silence while he enjoyed his unearned spoils. But what he didn't understand, what he never understood, was that I wasn't the same person he had ignored and walked over for years. I wasn't going to ask for justice. I was going to take it. Evelyn wasted no time. By the time I arrived home, she had already sent me a detailed list of every angle we could use to challenge the will. Undue influence? A possibility, if I could find proof that Daniel had pressured our mother into favoring him over me. Mental incapacity? If there was any record of cognitive decline, we could argue that she hadn't been of sound mind when making her decision. Breach of caregiver rights? This was where it got interesting. In some states, a caregiver who sacrifices their career and finances to provide long-term care can challenge a will that leaves them with nothing, especially if they had been financially dependent on the deceased. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a start. And if legal action didn't work, then I had other ways to make Daniel's life a living hell. The next morning, I decided to pay Daniel a visit. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to see the look on his face when he realized I wasn't backing down. He was already settling into his stolen kingdom, making himself comfortable in the house that had once been our family home, the house where I had nursed our mother through her worst nights, where I had watched her struggle to breathe, where I had held her hand when she was too weak to hold herself up. And now, Daniel lived there like it had always belonged to him. I found him sitting in the backyard, drink in hand, soaking in the morning sun like a king surveying his land. He looked up when I approached, and for a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise? Annoyance? Maybe a sliver of doubt? But then, the smirk was back, the same condescending expression that had always made my blood boil. "Wow," he drawled, taking a sip of his drink. "Didn't think you'd be back so soon? Miss the place already?" I stopped in front of him, arms crossed, my face unreadable. "I'm challenging the will." His smirk didn't falter, but I saw the way his fingers tightened around his glass, Are you, now? I nodded. Evelyn Carter is my lawyer. That got his attention. The smirk finally wavered. He knew Evelyn's reputation. Knew she didn't take on cases unless she intended to win. You're wasting your time, he said, leaning back lazily. Mom made her decision. You can't change that. I tilted my head slightly. We'll see. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. You don't have a case. You sound nervous, I observed. He scoffed. Please. This is just sad. You're grasping at straws because you can't accept that she wanted me to have everything. I studied him for a long moment, then smiled. Slow. Sharp. You know what I think, Daniel? I took a step closer, lowering my voice. I think you're scared. I'm not rolling over. And that terrifies you. He bristled, but I didn't give him a chance to respond. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving him sitting there, drink forgotten, fingers still clenched around the glass. Let him stew. This was just the beginning. Evelyn and I worked fast. Within days we had gathered medical records, financial statements, and witness testimonies. And what we found? It was worse than I had imagined. For years my mother had been funneling money to Daniel behind my back. Thousands upon thousands of dollars siphoned from savings accounts, withdrawn from emergency funds, all to support his reckless lifestyle. Meanwhile, I had been paying her medical bills. I had been using my own savings to make sure she had everything she needed. I had put my career on hold to take care of her, while he drained her resources without a second thought. And she had let him. She had enabled him, chosen him, rewarded him. And then, in the end, she had left me with nothing. Evelyn looked up from the financial documents, her expression unreadable. This is bad. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Yeah. Tell me something I don't know. She tapped her pen against the table. With this, we might be able to argue that he financially manipulated her. If we can prove she wasn't making independent decisions, we can burn this whole thing to the ground, I finished. She smiled. Exactly. Just when I thought I had seen the worst of it, something happened that pushed me past the point of no return. I received an eviction notice. Not from the apartment I lived in. No, that was mine. It was for the small storage unit where I had kept all of my childhood belongings. The things I had left behind at the house when I moved in to care for Mom, furniture, old photos, letters, memories. And now, Daniel was throwing them all away. He hadn't even called me, hadn't even given me the chance to retrieve them. He was erasing me, just like Mom had erased me from the will. Just like my family had erased me from their priorities. And that was it. That was the moment I knew. There was no coming back from this. That night I stood in my apartment, staring at the eviction notice, my entire body vibrating with a cold, steady rage. Daniel thought he could win. He thought he could destroy me the way he had always destroyed everything in his path. But he was wrong, because I wasn't the forgotten child anymore. I was the storm he never saw coming, and by the time I was finished with him, he would have nothing left. I sat in my apartment staring at the eviction notice from the storage unit, my pulse pounding in my ears. The words blurred before my eyes, but the message was crystal clear. Daniel wasn't just content with taking everything from me in the will. No, that wasn't enough. He wanted to wipe away any trace that I had ever existed in that house, to erase every piece of my childhood like I was nothing more than a footnote in our family's history. And that was a mistake. Because Daniel, for all his smug arrogance, still didn't understand who he was dealing with. He thought I would take this lying down. He thought I would walk away, defeated, licking my wounds in silence. He thought I was still the same person I had been all those years ago, the one who swallowed every slight, every rejection, every moment of being cast aside. But he was wrong. Because I wasn't the forgotten one anymore. I was the one holding the matchstick, and I was about to burn his world to the ground. I met with Evelyn the next morning, storming into her office with the eviction notice in hand. She barely glanced up before speaking. I take it Daniel did something stupid again? I dropped the notice onto her desk, my jaw tight with fury. He's throwing away everything I left behind in that house. He's not just taking the inheritance, he's trying to erase me. Evelyn let out a slow whistle, flipping the paper over like she could read something deeper between the lines. He really doesn't know when to quit, does he? No, I muttered, slumping into the chair across from her. which is why I need to hit him where it hurts." She smirked, leaning forward. "Now that's what I like to hear. What's the plan?" I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to think strategically instead of emotionally. "You said we could argue undue influence, use the financial records to prove he manipulated Mom into giving him everything." "Right. How fast can we file an injunction to freeze his assets?" Evelyn's eyebrows shot up. "You don't play around, do you?" I shook my head. "Not anymore." She grinned. "Then let's make this." By the end of the week, Daniel's world started unraveling. He had expected smooth sailing, thought he'd be able to cash in on his winnings without a hitch. But then, his bank accounts were frozen. The house, the one he had stolen out from under me, was now locked in a legal battle that prevented him from selling, renting, or doing anything with it. And the best part? He didn't see it coming. Not until he received a court notice, hand-delivered to his doorstep. I knew the moment he found out because the second my phone buzzed, his name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. Then a text came through. "Daniel. What the hell did you do?" I smirked, typing back slowly. "Me. I played the game, Danny boy, and I'm winning." It didn't take long for Daniel to show up at my doorstep. He had always been impatient, always thought he could charm, bully, or manipulate his way into getting whatever he wanted. But not this time. I opened the door to find him standing there, his usual self-assured confidence fractured by the first taste of losing. His perfectly tailored suit was rumpled, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked like he was seconds away from shattering his own teeth. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "You think this is funny?" he spat, stepping closer, his usual bravado crumbling under the weight of his frustration. "You think you can just take me down like this?" I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. "Take you down? I thought we were just playing the game. You know, the one you started?" His nostrils flared, hands twitching like he was barely holding himself back. "You froze my accounts. You put a legal hold on the house. You're making me look like a fool." I shrugged. "You did that all on your own." "You're insane," he muttered, running a hand through his hair, pacing in frustration. "This is just spiteful. You're not going to win this case." I smiled. "Maybe not. But you won't win easily. And in the meantime..." I gestured toward him, deliberately eyeing his wrinkled suit, the dark circles under his eyes. "You're already losing." Daniel hated losing. I saw it in the way his hands clenched into fists, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eye twitched ever so slightly. He was unraveling, bit by bit, thread by thread. "Drop the case," he said, voice dangerously low, "before you regret it." I exhaled slowly, stepping forward until I was just inches from him. "No, Daniel," I whispered, my voice sharp as a blade. "You are the one who's going to regret this." And then, without another word, I shut the door in his face. Daniel tried to fight back. He hired expensive lawyers, tried to argue that the will was airtight, that I was just a bitter sibling trying to stir up drama. He played the victim, the devoted son who had only ever wanted to honor Mom's wishes. But the problem with people like Daniel? They always assume they're untouchable. And when that illusion starts to shatter, they panic. The court battle dragged on for months, but while Daniel was pouring money into legal fees, I was playing the long game. And I had patience. I kept digging, kept uncovering more financial discrepancies that painted a very clear picture. Daniel had been bleeding Mom dry for years. I had witnesses, old friends, former housekeepers, even a few extended relatives who, once they saw where the wind was blowing, were suddenly eager to talk. Piece by piece I built my case, and slowly, public perception shifted. The golden child's shine was wearing off. People in his business circles started pulling away. Investors got nervous. His reputation, the thing he valued more than anything, was crumbling. And the final nail in the coffin? His own lawyer advised him to settle, because the last thing Daniel wanted was for this to go public. One rainy afternoon I got a call from Evelyn. "He's breaking," she said, amusement laced in her voice. "His lawyers are offering a settlement." I leaned back in my chair, a slow smirk forming. "Oh? And what's the offer?" "Half of everything." I let out a short laugh. "Not enough." She chuckled. "That's what I told them." An hour later, the final offer came through. 70% of the estate. I had won. Not just the money, not just the house, but everything that was taken from me. Evelyn sent over the paperwork. I signed. And just like that, Daniel was done. When I finally stepped foot back into that house, the house I had once loved, the house I had lost, the house that had held so many painful memories, I didn't feel grief. I didn't feel regret. I felt peace, because I had fought back. I had taken back what was mine, and I had won. As I stood in the doorway, the storm outside raging, I smiled. I wasn't the forgotten child. I was the one who had burned the golden child to the ground. I stood in the doorway of the house I had once called home, staring into the hollowed-out remains of a life that had long since unraveled. The air inside was different now, emptier, quieter, stripped of the warmth and illusion of belonging I had once desperately clung to. But it wasn't just the house that had changed. I had changed. I had walked into this war as the forgotten child, the disposable one, the one who had always been expected to bear the weight of sacrifice without ever reaping the rewards. But now, as I stood there, I wasn't the one left with nothing. Daniel was. I wasn't expecting to see him again. After the settlement was finalized, I thought he would slither away, licking his wounds, too proud to ever acknowledge just how thoroughly he had been beaten. But he showed up, one last time. It was late evening, the sky painted in dark shades of blue and gray, the scent of an oncoming storm thick in the air. I had been walking through the house, taking my time, reacquainting myself with the space that was mine again. Then, I heard it. 3 sharp knocks against the front door. I knew before I even opened it. Daniel stood on the porch, dressed in an expensive suit that no longer fit him quite right, his once pristine appearance now undone by stress and sleepless nights. There were dark circles under his eyes, his normally well-groomed hair slightly disheveled. He looked thinner, more worn down, like a man who had spent too much time fighting battles he wasn't prepared to lose. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "You're either brave or incredibly stupid to show up here." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "You really think you won, don't you?" I tilted my head slightly. "I don't think I won, Daniel. I know I did." His jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "You always had a chip on your shoulder," he muttered, shaking his head. "Always had this desperate need to prove something." "Yeah?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "And what exactly did I have to prove? That I was worth something? That I deserved better than being discarded like an afterthought?" "You act like you're some kind of victim," he snapped. "Like Mom did this to you." I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "She did do this to me, Daniel. She made her choice. She chose you, just like she always did, and look where it got her." That hit its mark. His expression twisted, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Guilt? Shame? I didn't care. He exhaled sharply, glancing past me, into the house. "So, what now?" he asked. "You sit in this big, empty house and gloat?" I studied him for a long moment before speaking. "No," I said slowly. "I move on." A flicker of something crossed his face, surprise maybe, or realization. "Just like that?" "Just like that," I echoed. Because I was done. I had fought for what was rightfully mine. Not because I needed validation, not because I wanted revenge, though that had been a satisfying bonus, but because I refused to let people like Daniel take from me anymore. I had spent too many years giving. Now it was time to live. Daniel's shoulders sagged slightly, and I saw something in him that I had never seen before. Defeat. He knew he had lost, and there was nothing left for him here. Without another word, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. I didn't watch him go. I simply stepped back inside, shutting the door behind me. I stayed in the house for another week, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. I walked through every room, letting the memories wash over me, some painful, some bittersweet. The echoes of the past lingered in the walls, in the creaking floors, in the way the light filtered through the old curtains just as it had when I was a child. But the thing about memories, they aren't enough to build a future on. This house had been my mother's prison, the place where I had given up my dreams to take care of her, where I had sacrificed years of my life for someone who, in the end, had never truly seen me. I had fought to take it back, but I didn't need it anymore. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers to sell the house. Not to just anyone. I sold it to a young couple, people who had dreams of filling it with new memories, with love, with a future that wasn't shackled to the past. I stood outside on the last day, watching as the moving trucks arrived, as the new owners stepped onto the porch with excitement in their eyes. And as I handed over the keys, I felt nothing but relief. This chapter of my life was over, and I was finally free. I didn't look back. Not at the house, not at my past, not at the people who had tried to break me. I had spent too long being the forgotten child. But now I was something else entirely. I was the one who had survived.